So this is a video that I've been wanting to make for a while. If you've been watching this channel, you know that the bulk of my content is on retro handhelds, which are, of course, emulation devices. I love retro handhelds. They're a convenient vehicle for putting all your favorite retro games in one place with the modern convenience of save states, load states, fast forward, quick boot up, etc. It's amazing that I can boot up my Mew Mini Plus, turn on a game, and then press this little button in the middle here to quickly switch between games while making save states so that I don't lose any of my progress. Emulation is a very convenient way to enjoy gaming and sometimes enhances the original experience. For example, retro handhelds are built with bright, vibrant LCD screens that are a huge step up from playing on unlit Game Boy screens or even screens with backlighting like on the Game Boy Advance SP. With emulation, we can also change settings that keep those older style aesthetic appeal of retro games with shaders and borders, like CRT looking shaders for SNES games, or simply putting on a Game Boy Advance SP logo on the bottom of the screen so that my Ambernic RG35XX SP can look like a real Game Boy Advance SP. And of course, would it be an 8-bit bongo video if I didn't bring up retro achievements, one of the best inventions of modern society, where you can earn points and trophies just like Xbox achievements or PlayStation achievements, but for retro video games. I mean, when else am I gonna have the excuse to train up my Pikachu in Pokemon Yellow to ungodly levels and have it take on the Elite Four by itself with no other Pokemon in your party, except for that achievement to do that very thing? It's a lot of fun, and I definitely think you should sign up if you haven't already. Just go to retroachievements.org. Anyway, clearly I love retro handhelds and emulation. It's an important part of the retro gaming community. However, there is something to be said about playing physical, original retro video games on original hardware. I know this can be a kind of a contentious topic in the retro gaming community. A lot of gamers say that emulation is the best way to experience older games and wouldn't touch physical hardware, while others say that emulation is not real gaming and people on the other side are just a bunch of pirates. You should just play physical, original games at all costs. I fall somewhere in the middle, and if you do too, let me know down in the comments. I know there are more middle of the road kind of people out there on this specific topic, so let me know in the comments. Okay, so in addition to playing on retro handhelds and other emulation devices, I enjoy playing games on original hardware. I'm gonna tell you the reason why, but first, a little story for the context of this video. When I was a little bongo, I loved Pokemon games. They were definitely my top 5 game franchises. The first Pokemon game I ever owned was Pokemon Blue. I got it on Christmas sometime in the late 90s along with the Game Boy Color. I was very young and therefore really struggled through that game, but I remember loving that game. We knew nothing about the Kanto region at that time, and Pokemon Blue and Red were just so magical to explore that region. I had no clue what I was doing in Pokemon Blue, but I do know that at some point I made it through the Elite Four after failing a lot of times. I also received Pokemon Yellow at some point. I remember being a little disappointed that everything was pretty much the same. Of course, now I know there are a lot of differences, but as a kid you're just thinking, hey, these are the same towns as before and the same Pokemon. After Gen 1, I did end up getting Pokemon Silver, and then after that, Pokemon Crystal. This is when my knowledge of Pokemon became a bit more matured, and I discovered things like duplication glitches and the entire post-game in Kanto, which blew my mind as a kid. But Gen 3, that's when I really got into the mechanics of Pokemon, specifically when Emerald came out. With Pokemon Sapphire, I was still more or less just playing for the story mode. I had a friend growing up who showed me all the different mechanics in breeding Pokemon, creating competitive ones, and the beauty of the Battle Frontier. I put hours and hours working on all that post-game stuff. I discovered that the main story was just really a little appetizer in the vast meal of what the post-game is. You could catch more legendaries like Groudon, Kyogre, Latios or Latias, the Regis, and of course Rayquaza. You have the true championship battle you can do with Steven. You have the entire contest minigame. You have secret bases to decorate, berry trees to grow, and of course, the Battle Frontier. Possibly the most difficult post-game challenge of any Pokemon game, which alone requires hours and hours of grinding to get the perfect team to even have a chance of getting a silver or gold symbol. And this is assuming that you don't have a single friend who owns a copy of Emerald. All of that mentioned is stuff you can do 100% on your own. If you know someone with Pokemon Emerald, there's all kinds of multiplayer things you can do. The point is, there's a ton of stuff you can do in this game. I've sunk in hundreds of hours into this game as a kid, and I plan on doing even more as an adult. Additionally, if all that content isn't enough for you, Pokemon Emerald also connects with the other games like Red Fire and Green Leaf and Coliseum and XD Gale Darkness. If you really want to go all out with that game, you could play all these other games with the purpose of completing the ultimate challenge of Pokemon Emerald, which is the National Dex. One of every Pokemon all the way through Kanto to Hoenn. Now, there's a point to this story, and I'm going to get to that point right now. Why I enjoy playing physical games over emulation in certain circumstances. I use the example of Pokemon Emerald for a reason. This game is a game that can be enjoyed for its basic characteristics, a great story with fun gameplay. And if that's all you want to do, I'd recommend the emulation route for all the conveniences of emulation. Plus, this game in particular is way too expensive right now. But if your goal is to do everything and put in countless hours to all the post-game content, well, that changes things. Sure, you can complete a game like Pokemon Emerald on an emulator. You can hack the game to let you collect all the Pokemon in the game without having to trade. Heck, you can even trade between emulators nowadays if you know what you're doing. There are also retro achievements for collecting gold symbols in the Battle Frontier, so that you need to accomplish that part of the post-game through an emulator anyway. But at the end of the day, your save file from an emulator is just another file on your computer or retro handheld or wherever you're playing it. It doesn't have a physical footprint in the real world. Think of a physical game like Pokemon Emerald as a blank canvas that you can create the masterpiece of that game. You are putting in the hours, accomplishing the most difficult aspects of the game, and when you finished everything you wanted to do, you can sit back and know that your cartridge of Emerald, or whatever it is yours, and it can't be replaced. You put it on that shelf and know that someday someone is going to put that into a Game Boy Advance, and in 5 years all your accomplishments will be there in all its glory. Heck, maybe you'll pass it down to your kids and show them what, it was like. And yes, I'm very much aware that you can just take that save file from Pokemon Emerald and put it on your computer, and then it's like any other save file, but it's just not the same. It really is not the same. If there's something different about playing it on an authentic copy, the way the creators intended, and then putting that save on the authentic cartridge is different. Anyway, the points I'm trying to make are not coming from a place of practicality. It's coming from something deeper. Maybe nostalgia, the nostalgia of having those games as a kid and holding on that physical medium. Maybe it's just the sense of, doing something with a purpose. When I was in high school and wasn't very interested in the Game Boy Advance anymore, I did something really dumb. I gave away all my Game Boy Advance games for free. I was like, here man, take them. I don't care. Ugh, why? Yep, I had given away my copy of Pokemon Emerald. Despite this, recently, I came up with the idea that I wanted to play Pokemon Emerald on a physical cartridge and complete everything I wish I had completed as a kid. Now with an adult brain. That means beating the game, catching all the legendaries, beating Steven, catching every single Pokemon in the National Dex, and yes, even getting all the gold medals in the Battle Frontier. Yes, I understand this is a huge task, and I expect it will take me a long time to do this. But it's going to scratch that nostalgic itch, and I look forward to those evenings where I can just sit on the couch next to my wife, watching some TV and relaxing with some good old Pokemon Emerald on the side. And yes, I understand that if I want to catch every Pokemon in the National Dex, I will need to purchase more games from this generation. This includes Pokemon Coliseum, XD, and one of my favorites, Green Leaf. But I'm excited to add all these games to my collection, beat them, and then put them all together to complete the Pokemon Emerald save file to its fullest. All along the way, I can record my journey and share it with the world through YouTube. It's going to be super expensive. These Pokemon games are not cheap. The centerpiece to Generation 3 of Pokemon is Pokemon Emerald version, which is the most expensive piece. But luckily, the biggest, most expensive piece was already taken care of. Yup, I got my hands on an authentic copy of Pokemon Emerald, and I got it for free. I was talking to my best friend at a wedding about Pokemon Emerald and how much I loved it growing up, and I was thinking about like saving up and trying to buy it again, and he was like, dude, you could just have my old copy. And I was like, seriously? And he said, yeah, I don't really play it anymore, and I want you to have it. So he just sent it to me, and it's like a flawless copy of Pokemon Emerald. I'm So grateful for having that game, and honestly, it's more cherished knowing that it's the copy that was for my best friend growing up, and we played that game together a lot growing up. Pokemon Coliseum and XD Gale of Darkness are another story. These games easily run over $100 as of the recording of this video. Coliseum hovers around $130, but XD Gale of Darkness gets close to $200, which is insane. Pokemon Green Leaf is usually expensive as well, unless you get a Japanese copy, which is cheaper and what I'm planning on doing. At this point, you must think I'm crazy for spending this much money on physical games when I could literally emulate them for free. And this is true, I'm probably a little crazy. I could experience all these games on an emulator. But I'm purchasing these games more for just playing them, but also for the experience of owning them. The experience of finding them at the store, holding that game in your physical hands, and then putting them into your tried and true hardware to play them, just like you would have done back in the day. Over time, I want to build this Pokemon Gen 3 collection to eventually complete my Pokemon Emerald masterpiece. And by the way, this Pokemon Generation 3 obsession is only the beginning. I want to do this for other genres of games too. I'd love to eventually purchase and play Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, A Link to the Past, Super Mario World, other Pokemon generations, Banjo-Kazooie, and much, much, much more. I guess I'm just becoming a retro game collector in addition to a retro game enthusiast. But you know what? I'm still gonna play on like the RG35 XXSP and my Retroid Pocket 4 Pro and my Miu Mini Plus and other retro handhelds because I love emulating games, and I'll continue to play them, and I'll continue making those 100-hour reviews. In fact, right now I'm playing Pokemon Crystal Clear, which is a Pokemon ROM hack, on my Anbernic 28XX, which is like the perfect device for that game. I like that I can pick up these games and just start playing them on my retro handhelds whenever I feel like it, which is a lot harder to do on original hardware. The point is, there's room to love both. I'm an emulation fan and an original hardware fan. The yin and yang, the tomato to my potato, the jelly to the peanut butter, you know what I mean. Anyway, I hope this video made sense. It took a lot of work on the front end to really unpack my thoughts and really understand how I feel about emulation versus playing on original hardware. I'd love to know your opinion on the topic. Please leave that in the comments below. Let me know where you stand on the whole spectrum of emulation versus original hardware. Do you like both? Are you just an emulation fan? Are you just an original hardware fan and emulation is just piracy and you want to stay away from that? I really want to know. I feel like it's a good discussion to have, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video and getting to know the inside of my brain a little bit. Peace.